This course is sponsored by the Bob Woodruff Foundation. We would like to thank the Bob Woodruff Foundation for their generosity in making this course possible.
Hi, I'm Dr. Renee Swift McCain. I've worn many hats in my recent life: Air Force officer, public health professional, educator, military spouse, student veteran, and more. Whether serving my country or my community, I've continually witnessed the importance of shared learning. An organizational learning strategy ensures we retain vital lessons learned and avoid unnecessary trial and error. As a collaborative leader, you play a big role in picking the shared learning model that works best for you and your fellow collaborators. Why develop a model for shared learning? Shared learning is closely linked with two of the core collective impact conditions of success: shared measurement and common agenda. Like a triathlon team referencing a GPS during a race, we measure not merely to know where we are in relation to our goal, but to assess what we must do in relation to the others with whom we're working to achieve it. The moment of assessment is where shared learning lives. Some models for shared learning are comprehensive. They capture the culture, practices, and changing priorities of organizational learning. Others are more granular, providing a framework for tackling one challenge within your overall strategy. We've chosen a few models for organizational learning to share with you. FSG, the social impact strategy firm that founded the Collective Impact Forum, developed the Lighthouse model for organizational learning. This easy-to-tailor model builds upon a foundation of a learning culture that encourages openness and trust and enables risk-taking. To build the cultural foundation for learning, organizations can build trust by beginning each meeting with the objectives, including learning from peers. Foster open discussion by establishing a non-attribution environment where participants agree not to share discussion outside the forum without permission. Establish organizational norms, including how to disagree. Leaders can uphold the learning culture by seeking feedback from both within the collaborative and the community by modeling the act of reflection, making learning a part of their vocabulary in everyday dealings, framing their own failures as opportunities to learn, relying on data to show what's working. Once the cultural foundation is in place and socialized, it's time to build a learning plan. There's no cookie-cutter learning plan, but good learning plans should include the following components: reflection on the day-to-day realities of implementing the collaborative's work. This anecdotal evidence is part of the information that contributes to learning. Analysis of data. Collaboratives with a shared measurement strategy can identify trends, findings, progress, or problems by looking at data. Feedback from the community. As the environment and context develop, awareness of what's changing contributes to our learning. It's a good idea to include both the community of practice and the community at large. In this model, the Lighthouse's beam illuminates the collaborative's current learning priorities. Learning priorities can be developed democratically by asking members what they most want to learn in the coming years. Priorities can also be refined by backbone leadership or teased out by a facilitator. Take a moment to assess what parts of the Lighthouse your collaborative may have already built. For any missing components, try to identify a single first step you can take toward building them. Triple loop learning is a model that's been adapted and combined with other concepts since the 1970s. The loops refer to the feedback processes that inform learning in three distinct scopes: actions and results, assumptions or framing and results, and context and results. First is single loop learning, which is concerned with doing things right and often right now. It includes close-in tactical adjustments. It's learning, but without much reflection or greater context. Zooming out just a little allows reframing of a problem. Reframing brings us into the second loop. In the second loop, we consider the systems that are contributing to the issue at hand, what our role is in addressing it, and how we measure what's working. In examining causality at this scope, the question becomes, are we doing the right things? An even wider view opens us up for the third loop, context. Context considers the big picture drivers of the scenario, our mission and vision, the culture in which we operate, and policies. At this more strategic level of learning, we ask, how do we discern what is right? Collaboratives can use triple loop learning as a framework for studying the problems they're trying to solve collectively. Take a moment to reflect. Select an issue facing your collaborative where you feel reactive or corrective or stuck in the first loop. Then, zoom out, considering how you might reframe the issue. Write down what systems contribute to the issue and what your role is, or could be, in solving it. The nonprofit strategy consultants at Bridgespan researched the organizational learning in nonprofits. They identified 4 elements to organizational learning. 1. Supportive leaders have clear vision and goals for organizational learning and not only champion, but model learning behaviors. 2. Collaboratives with a culture of continuous improvement measure results, make sure values are aligned, and incentivize improvement and learning. 3. Defined learning structure means clear delineation of who collects, prepares, and shares learning and how. It also refers to how those primarily responsible for managing knowledge engage with members. 4. Collaboratives can develop intuitive knowledge processes. Examples include workflows based on learning priorities and designing systems for collecting, preparing, and sharing learning. By necessity, these workflows and systems often involve technological platforms. Take a moment to reflect. How does, or how could, your collaborative incentivize continuous improvement and learning? Most folks don't think about bias in the context of learning. But a learning bias can create a significant barrier unless you're aware of it and take steps to overcome it. Learning requires us not only to admit, but to embrace that there is something we don't know or something we can do better. We all have biases informed by our backgrounds, experiences, and environments. Many of us have inherited biases from our years of work experience that might not be serving us well in our collaborative work. Let's examine these. Research shows that we often operate under a success bias. Success bias can look like fear of failure, hiding or minimizing mistakes, and taking credit for good luck and denouncing failures as bad luck. Ultimately, success bias keeps us in a fixed mindset instead of a growth mindset. Collaborative leaders can lower this barrier by treating mistakes as learning opportunities. They can also mitigate bias by relying on data to understand factors contributing to success and failure. Our work habits often reflect a bias towards action. Learning requires reflection, and we're often too task-saturated or tired to pause to take the time to reflect. Behavioral scientists and business scholars recommend scheduling time to plan the day ahead and reflect on the day, maybe during your commute. Leaders of backbone organizations can encourage time to think by designating a day to be uninterrupted by meetings. Thinking Thursdays and No Meeting Fridays have been adopted successfully by private and independent sector organizations. Collateral benefits include improved workflow and increased team satisfaction. Collaborative leaders can designate time in meetings to debrief events and projects from multiple perspectives. Expertise bias happens when collaborators defer to someone with more technical qualification, more experience, or higher rank when it comes to learning. But the truth is, a good idea can come from anyone. For instance, caseworkers may be the ones running up against a systemic barrier again and again, or veterans might have the closest experience with an issue you're trying to address. If you're a collaborative leader, make sure you've got a mix of perspectives represented at your table, and take the extra step of asking each person to contribute their thoughts. No one learning model is going to fit your collaborative's needs off the shelf. Collaboratives with greater capacities, more maturity, and strong backbone organizations may have more access to resources and experience with data. New collaboratives may have more agility than established efforts. What matters is how your collaborative adapts and applies the shared learning model. Here is your roadmap for implementing your shared learning strategy. Co-create your shared learning model collectively. For it to be sustainable, you need membership buy-in, and to secure buy-in, early feedback is best. Keep the end user in mind during the design process. If you design a process that renders immaculately presented lessons learned but is a pain to follow, you'll end up with an empty library. Start modeling the culture you want to spread now. You don't have to have a strategy in place to begin socializing the habits of vulnerability, curiosity, and openness. Be prepared to further adapt a model or models as your collaborative matures. For instance, if you have a breakthrough in your shared measurement strategy, you'll want to integrate this new data source into your learning culture, plans, processes, and priorities. Explore the Shared Learning Toolkit linked below this video to find further reading, planning exercises to complete with your collaborative, templates for learning plans, and sample priorities.
Thank you for taking the time to learn about this important topic and about our nation's military, veterans, and their family members. If you have any questions about this course or need assistance, please visit the PsychArmor website or call the PsychArmor support line at 844-779-2427.